3.
I guess that means we're live. So, all right. So, good morning and welcome everybody to day 2 of the advanced VI program judging for Syracuse. I just wanted to take a second and thank the judges for coming out and taking the time to go through the portfolios this morning. I think we had a really productive day yesterday. We got some really good feedback, and I think it's very valuable what you guys will offer to our career field. So, looking forward to hearing the discussion as we go through this morning. But real quick, we'll just take a second and we'll go around and just make some introductions, tell everybody who you are and why you're here judging, I guess. So we'll start with Chief Rush.
Chief Master Sergeant Marty Rush. I've been an AFN guy for 15 years of my 21-year career, and really excited to see some of the products that got turned in today.
I'm Craig Lauderback. I've been in film for about 23 years, directed commercials, edited commercials for brands like Procter & Gamble, Coors Light, NFL. Also created shows for the History Channel, and currently I'm the creative director of USAA.
Hi everybody, I'm Master Sergeant Nicholas Kurtz. I've been in the Air Force almost 17 years. I did my first 8 years overseas at AFN assignments in Aviano, Italy and Yokota, Japan. After that I went through the Syracuse Military Motion Media Program, class of 2009. After that I was at the Defense Media Activity for 6 years, and now I'm an instructor at DINFOS, teaching video production.
All right. So before we get started, we're going to do an oath real quick. So if everybody stand up. Raise your right hand, repeat after me. I solemnly swear.
I solemnly swear
That I will. Without prejudice or partiality.
without prejudice or partiality,
Having in view. Both the special fitness of the Airmen.
both the special fitness of the Airmen
And the efficiency of the United States Air Force.
and the efficiency of the United States Air Force,
Perform the duties imposed upon me.
perform the duties imposed upon me.
All right, thank you. Okay, so same as yesterday, we have the portfolios. We'll view them up on the screen. As we go through these, I would just ask, Sergeant Kurtz, you've been to Syracuse, you know kind of what it entails, so you can bring that perspective. I would just say, as we go through this, if you feel like there are entries that should not compete any further, let's have that discussion.
Okay.
So feel free to bring that up as we go through. But other than that, I'll turn it over to our folks here, Airman Johnson, Sergeant Redente, and we'll start working through the portfolios.
So as we discussed, just make sure that you're labeling the videos on your score sheets to kind of have a refresher on what it is, whether it be the title or the subject of what's going on in the video. You'll score accordingly based off of storytelling, video quality, creativity, audio quality, and editing quality. The SOPs are printed out and next to your computer, so if you need to refer back to what the SOP states, we do have that next to you for you to reference. The portfolios are intended to be anonymous, so if we try to make sure that we took out names and whatnot, but if for some reason you recognize somebody, try to be non-biased, because that is the intent. Just make sure that when you're going through, if you have any comments, we're going to, not only is it live and recorded for future reference, but for the nominees, the blocks that have the comments, we're going to get that information back to the nominees. So please feel free to use that block as much as you want. And other than that, if you have any questions, please let us know. Thank you for being here.
So basically, starting first, it looks like anything you produce, we probably want to do it.
Oh yeah.
This is a video feature story.
Video.
It's a little overwhelming at first when you realize that, a kid this young is going to have surgery. It's a little overwhelming at first when you realize that, a kid this young is going to have surgery and kids themselves are a lot to handle, alone. But on top of the surgery, I think it was nice to have the specialists who always just, put us at ease and made us really feel like they were very confident.
When a family finds out that their baby may have a facial difference, that can be stressful for them, and that can impact relationships or workplace issues, just to have those stresses. So we want to let patients know and families know that we can support them here, we can take care of them, not just with surgery, but any emotional needs.
Within, 6 to 8 hours of him being born, every specialist on that team had seen him, came to our room and saw him. And I think he was in for the first clinic just a few weeks after that. And he was doing really well with eating. And so he was able to have his first surgery to repair the lip and nose at 3 months old. And then at 9 months old, he had his palate repaired. And so he's been doing remarkably well ever since.
We have a whole craniofacial team here that has social worker, developmentalists, and audiologists, speech pathologists, geneticists, everybody to take care of these families so that they can feel peace of mind knowing that their family members are in good hands and that the reconstructive process is underway and that we can help them in all the realms of their life so they can stay focused on their military mission as well.
Everyone, throughout the whole craniofacial team just seemed more than willing to share their time and their experience to let us know and really just to put us at ease.
I remember we showed our friends pictures of him when he was born and then after his repairs, and they thought it was a whole new kid. Like, it's amazing what they did, honestly. They really didn't even think he was the same little kid.
Well, I still get very touched every time I get to do a cleft lip surgery because that was the beginning. And I bring the mom and dad back to see their baby after surgery and just see the smile on their face, to see the work that we did. They know surgery's over and that we took good care of their baby and they feel relieved, and then to see their new smile. So it's really rewarding still every time.
To give him such a remarkable outcome, she's transformed his life.
While we're rewatching, please, thank you.
It's a little overwhelming at first when you realize that, a kid this young is going to have surgery, and kids themselves are a lot to handle, alone. But on top of the surgery, I think it was nice to have the specialists who always just, put us at ease and made us really feel like they were very confident.
When a family finds out that their baby may have a facial difference, that can be stressful for them, and that can impact relationships or workplace issues, just to have those stresses. So we want to let patients know and families know that we can support them here, we can take care of them, not just with surgery, but any emotional needs.
Within, 6 to 8 hours of him being born, every specialist on that team had seen him, came to our room and saw him. And I think he was in for the first clinic just a few weeks after that. And he was doing really well with eating. And so he was able to have his first surgery to repair the lip and nose at 3 months old. And then at 9 months old, he had his palate repaired. And so he's been doing remarkably well ever since.
We have a whole craniofacial team here that has social worker, developmentalists, and audiologists, speech pathologists, geneticists, everybody to take care of these families so that they can feel peace of mind knowing that their family members are in good hands and that the reconstructive process is underway and that we can help them in all the realms of their life so they can stay focused on their military mission as well.
Everyone, throughout the whole craniofacial team just seemed more than willing to share their time and their experience to let us know and really just to put us at ease.
I remember we showed our friends pictures of him when he was born and then after his repairs, and they thought it was a whole new kid. Like, it's amazing what they did, honestly. They really didn't even think he was the same little kid.
Well,
I still get very touched every time I get to do a cleft lip surgery because that was the beginning. And I bring my mom and dad back to see their baby after surgery and just see the smile on their face, to see the work that we did. Surgery's over and that we took good care of their baby and they feel relieved, and then to see their new smile. So it's really rewarding still every time.
To give him such a remarkable outcome, it's just transformed his life.
Can you play the beginning just one more time, just the first 20 seconds, please?
It's a little overwhelming at first when you realize that a kid this young is going to have surgery, and kids themselves are a lot to handle alone. But on top of the surgery, I think it was nice to have the specialists who always just put us at ease and made us really feel like they were very confident.
When a family finds out that their baby may have a facial difference,
Do we know if this producer also shot the photographs at all, or were those all provided by the family? I'm guessing they were provided by either the hospital or the family or both. Do we have that information?
That information we don't have.
Okay.
Standard graphic packages.
That is a standard graphics package for the front and tail, so that's not something that the producer would have created. That's something that was given to them to add in. So, use your best judgment in terms of if there were no graphics, then how did they integrate photos and stuff? Especially I would have to say that some of those photos were not taken by the producer.
I'm guessing
Yeah.
I'm guessing none of that was
So-
actually shot by.
You want to start the discussions real quick, or you?
Overall, I thought it was pretty solid story. Felt kind of surface level. So you're dealing with kind of a news package. I don't know that this was necessarily a very good representation of you going in as a video producer of the video that you're able to produce. The only video that this person shot for this was the interviews that would appear. I didn't see anything in there that wasn't provided by either the hospital or the family. Sometimes that's all you have to work with, which is fine, and I think they did a good job in terms of using those photos effectively. They weren't just plastered up on screen. They made them engaging, animated them well. They helped tell the story. But if I'm putting together a package that is supposed to showcase my abilities as a video storyteller, I don't want that to maybe show some of my video shooting and editing as well as the storytelling. So I thought that was somewhat weak. I wasn't crazy about the interview being the entire family. When your two principal characters are the mom and dad, again, another opportunity to show that video skill would be to show the family interacting together, but not just sitting on the couch when half of the people that are in that shot aren't doing anything. It just keeps everything at arm's length. So you're not really giving me that emotional tie to this family. They're just kind of explaining kind of what happened. Getting into the story again, carrying on that theme of it feeling just kind of surface level. I get that this was an emotionally, challenging time for them, but again, it wasn't. They could have probably done a better job during the interview, and had they set it up one-on-one with those characters, it kind of probably would have gone better. Of just what was it like when you found out that your son was facing this, and getting just that story arc, beginning, middle, and end of this was the challenge we were facing. The Air Force offered this solution, and now bring it full circle. This is how we're recovering that. It's a great story in terms of like showing how the Air Force cares for airmen and families, and hitting that. But from the storytelling aspect, it just was kind of in the middle for me.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the pacing and the story build was nice. I think that, I would totally agree with you, and that's one of the notes I had. If you had gone with individual interviews, dad alone, mom alone, the daughters alone, you would have been a lot more intimate into that emotion, and you could have built it out bigger, like you were saying, instead of it being a surface level, it would have dived deeper into that. And then by playing back and forth as a storytelling of dad saying something, mom following up with the emotion, and then letting the hospital, because again, I agree with you, it looks like a lot of this footage came from somewhere else. So you could have enhanced the footage you got by going with a single. Plus it looks like there was only one mic. If you had done individual interviews, your audio quality would have jumped tenfold, because now you would have been focusing on one person, not trying to. I mean, good technique given the situation you're in, but if you had isolated them, you could have elevated your quality better on the audio side.
Just so folks have a sense of consensus, I agree. I'm not a big fan of group interviews. I think the audio suffers, especially when other people start talking and you haven't mic'd them up. I think that's part of the downfall of doing a group interview. Additionally, you have 3 other people sitting there staring at the camera kind of awkwardly while somebody talks. I think it's great for an establishing shot, but then I think somewhere in the interview you could have drilled in on dad, who did most of the talking. And then additionally, from a technical standpoint, I thought his audio was very tinny. I don't know if that's the quality of the mic or if it was,
I think it's more proximity,
room noise, or how it
we
worked.
had
But
one mic for 4 people.
but the audio from his mic, he was mic'd very close. It should have picked up better quality sound than it did. Additionally, I kind of felt cheated because, especially like the storytelling category that we talk about talks about beginning, middle, and end. I got a middle and an end. There was really no setup, and that's where if you don't. So, in the interest of full disclosure, I'm not a big fan of non-narratives, because I really think it's difficult to get your interview subjects to tell the whole story without any kind of narration to support or provide some backgrounding that they don't give you. And I think in this instance, we didn't have at the beginning, Johnny was born with a cleft palate, and we were devastated.
Right. He was already born. That's the very first shot.
Yeah, the very first thing.
See
That's
the
why I
problem,
had you.
There's no setup.
That's why I had you play the beginning again, because the very first thing is it's very difficult when your child has to have a surgery. What surgery? What are we talking about? I see pictures and I make that connection, but you really need someone to tell you what happened, how they felt, and that emotional appeal. So
you ask a mother what it feels like when you're expecting a child.
Yeah.
That's how you set it up. We were prepared to welcome this, and we just had no idea that. And then you reveal what the problem is.
And I think this is a good example of someone who is getting ready to make that leap to that next step for like surprises in the story and storytelling, and just hasn't quite gotten there yet. But
that's where I think the individual interviews, if you had set it up, you don't see the photos of the child yet, but as a parent, we were expecting, blah, blah, blah. Our child was born, this is what happened. That will send that ending emotion a lot stronger when mom is crying. Of the joy that this family has experienced through this cardiofacial surgery, but we didn't set it up. I mean, I got the goosebumps at the end when I saw mom crying as a father. But if I had set it up stronger in the beginning of that anticipation, that curiosity, and then turn the story again through those individual interviews, I would have had a little bit more cranked up.
Well, and I agree with Sergeant Kurtz's comment that you can do the interview on the couch and get your backgrounding and maybe even use some of that audio, but the real thing that I wanted to see was the interaction at dinner, or them out on the playground with all the kids. Right. Or, that's the stuff that I think is really missing and would have provided that next level of production.
I will say from a public affairs standpoint, I feel like they did a really good job
Huge win,
getting
yeah.
the Air Force message out there, which it's kind of a fine line to make an interesting product that still pays the bills, you know. So usually you're too far on one side or the other, where, you know, if you're too far to the left, you've got, you know, this great family story, but, you know, why does the Air Force pay you to go tell that story?
Yeah.
If you're too far to the right, I don't care about these characters, it's just command information.
And I'm sure Walter Reed loved it.
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah,
it
exactly.
touts all their capabilities, and you can't argue with the results. That's a pretty miraculous, I mean, you can hardly even tell it's there anymore,
Right.
so.
Yeah, so they did a really good job effectively communicating the message without bludgeoning people with it, I thought.
I called this cleft palate surgery. I don't know what you guys called it, but that way it makes it easier.
Facial
for them.
surgery?
Facial surgery, is that what you call it?
No, craniofacial.
And this is more for y'all's reference because, I mean, we aren't gonna have a long day, I imagine, but if when we put the scores on there and you can kind of reference back and look at your score sheets, that way, it's just kind of a memory jogger for you guys.
And so this entry has a second video.
Like, because you can see that it has a wrapper on it, so it has a head and tail, so it airs just like that. But I wonder if there was a lead written with it, because the lead might have explained what we're talking about with the beginning, and that's what I think you run into with a donut like that, that you don't get that intro and then you're missing it when you do just the wrapper.
And anymore, you know, our products aren't being seen in traditional newscasts anyway, so we don't have the benefit of those leads and anchor intros that we used to. So it really has to stand on its own. And I've seen other DoD info. I'm familiar with the product. It is pretty much a standalone. You've got, you know, it'll go up on YouTube basically as is. You may have a description, you know, in a social media post you'll have something that kind of helps set the stage. But again, you know, you've got to really hook me in the beginning and get that all in that package.
Kurt, do you guys use terms like donut and wrapper, that kind of stuff? Or am I just really old?
It's news terms, right?
Yeah, so it's all inclusive, so it has a head and tail that's pre-produced that you kind of
Yeah.
put your story in between, so. All right, we're ready when you are, Airmen.
Video 2 is a training documentary.
Training documentation. Via TD, right?
Yes, sir.
Perfection is expected and excellence is tolerated. When they come to drill team, we basically let them know that they have about 6 months to reach their first major milestone. If they're not able to accomplish that, then unfortunately they would have to try another platoon.
I'm here to instruct people, train people for when I leave, they will do the job better than me. That's my end goal, is to make sure that they are better than me.
We strive to do our best, and our best has to be perfection. They're here even when they're not supposed to be here. After hours, you can...
There was some points where I did, like, you know what, I can't do this anymore. But it all goes back to my grandfather. He told me way back when, like, you can do whatever you need to, just do it. So I just listened to that, and I would call him as much as possible to tell him, hey, I'm doing better. So then he died. So I was like, you know what, okay, I'm still gonna do this, and I'm gonna do this for him. So every time we do our prayers before we go out there, I make sure that he knows that I'm up in front now.
I call it Navy drill team. Sergeant Church, can we watch it again, please? Oh, actually, Airman Johnson, are you controlling? All right. Sergeant Controllers, will you tell Airman Johnson to start again?
Perfection is expected and excellence is tolerated. When they come to drill team, we basically let them know that they have about 6 months to reach their first major milestone. If they're not able to accomplish that, then unfortunately they would have to try another platoon.
I'm here to instruct people, train people for when I leave, they will do the job better than me. That's my end goal, is to make sure that they are better than me.
We strive to do our best, and our best has to be perfection. They're here even when they're not supposed to be here. After hours, you can see them drilling. You'll see them training each other.
We'll practice 9 to 12 hours a day.
That type of dedication is something that you can't teach.
You're actually required to name your rifle. My rifle's name is Wheatley.
Petty Officer Reed, what can I say? As soon as I arrived 1 year ago, he was someone that initially stood out to me that took initiative. He's looked at what was on my plate and has always asked me, hey, what can I do to help? How can I be an added value to the drill team? He's actually one of the top qualified members, which means that he's not just the leader or one of the leaders in drill team, but he's one of the leaders here in this command.
In all honesty, I was the underdog.
Perfection is expected and excellence is tolerated. When they come to drill team, we basically let them know that they have about 6 months to reach their first major milestone. If they're not able to accomplish that, then unfortunately they would have to try another platoon.
I'm here to instruct people, train people for when I leave, they will do the job better than me. That's my end goal, is to make sure that they are better than me.
We strive to do our best, and our best has to be perfection. They're here even when they're not supposed to be here. After hours, you can see them drilling. You'll see them training each other.
We'll practice 9 to 12 hours a day.
That type of dedication is something that you can't teach.
You're actually required to name your rifle. My rifle's name is Wheatley.
Petty Officer Reed, what can I say? As soon as I arrived 1 year ago, he was someone that initially stood out to me that took initiative. He's looked at what was on my plate and has always asked me, hey, what can I do to help? How can I be an added value to the drill team? He's actually one of the top qualified members, which means that he's not just the leader or one of the leaders in drill team, but he's one of the leaders here in this command.
In all honesty, I was the underdog. It was kind of depressing. At first, I didn't really see it because back in high school, I was kind of like, I don't want to say bullied, but I definitely wasn't the most popular kid. There was some points where I did, like, you know what, I can't do this anymore. But it all goes back to my grandfather. He told me way back when, like, you can do whatever you need to, just do it. So I just listened to that, and I would call him as much as possible to tell him, hey, I'm doing better. So then he died. So I was like, you know what, okay, I'm still gonna do this, and I'm gonna do this for him. So every time we do our prayers before we go out there, I make sure that he knows that I'm up in front now.
You ready? Yep. Sir, do you want to start this time?
Yeah, I really like the camera work on this one. The lighting, the use of rule of thirds, not so just square up. I like the even a little trick editing here in the drill. Story, I'm really interested in the story. I lost interest right out of the gate because I don't know who we're talking about. I don't know my character. I think if we had set up the tragedy to triumph, even in the music tone has more of an ominous, where I'm looking at an ESPN, he overcame everything, sports guy, and this is kind of that type of tone. So if you had set him up being the guy right out of the gate bully, I can see all the drills going on, but I don't know who I'm talking about and why I'm emotionally connected to the person yet. So I felt like that came, I mean, again, it's a really good story. I just feel like it could have been stronger if you introduced me to the challenge, introduced me to the character, and then let the disciplines of military and the training and how they go into the late night is part of why he is becoming successful and proud of what he's doing and who he is.
Yeah, I agree. This was kind of a bipolar type of story because it did a really good job of setting the stage for a different story than it ended up being.
Yes.
You got to kind of choose what you're going to focus on. So if it's about the drill team, because we had these two kind of co-equal characters until about midway through, and then we find out, okay, it is actually about the one. You needed, like you said, kind of introduce us to him a little earlier and let us know that this is his story, and the drill team is just the setting for it. Whereas it kind of got that backwards. One thing I like to teach my students is that you kind of start off with a thesis statement for your story, and that needs to pay off at the end. Well, the thesis statement was about just the drill team. It had nothing to do with his personal challenge. So again, it was like half of two really good stories instead of like one whole really good story. Definitely agree with you that this was kind of redemption based on. Try not to compare the two products together, but it is all part of one package. You know, we went from not seeing any of the videography skills of this person to they kind of redeem themselves. Yeah, it's very good video quality. Love the interview shots, the way they were set up, tack sharp focus on them, great lighting, and then yeah, the editing was super creative for what it was. I mean, there's a lot of matched action opportunity there. I was a little disappointed that. And I've shot on DSLR, so I know how challenging it is with those prime lenses when you're up close. Every pulse and heartbeat that you have is translated through the lens there. You've really got to find a way to stabilize some of that stuff. I can't deal with the earthquake cam on an otherwise very highly polished piece like this. It's almost distracting. But I'm glad that they took the risks and got in close to really show some of that detail, you know, from the boots all the way to the tips of their heads. I really feel like I've got a good understanding of what it is they're doing.
Well, in this case, I think I'm indifferent sometimes on handheld. In this case, I think some of the shots that you set up worked well because it put you in the environment. So a little of that handheld in this case, it wasn't overdone.
Right.
So I did like that because I felt like when we're down, when the first shot, when we're kind of sitting there, I feel like I'm sitting right in that person's face because the camera is acting as my body. I shift, I move, so.
It didn't bother me as much in this one either.
Yeah. If it's done
It was
right,
those,
it's very
so to
emotional.
me, my rule of thumb for most folks is, they can handle it, is if the subject or the action is moving, then you can move a little bit. But when it's rock steady, you better be rock steady because it just shows it horribly if you're not.
So I think there's a nice blend between the handheld and the sticks. So like to do the effect and just to grab some of those, just like really focus on all the exercise. I think there was a nice blend of that. I really did like that.
No, I totally agree. I think that the handheld added to it. I think my gripe more so. And, you know, if it takes certain equipment too, like either a gimbal stabilizer or something like that. Our eyes just don't shake like that, and so that to me, especially in that environment, I mean, they're not in battle or anything. Yeah, there's movement, it's kinetic, it's dynamic. You can have handheld movement, but you've got to know your equipment and know those limitations, especially with those prime lenses where it's like you've got no image stabilization. It's gonna, like, every micrometer is gonna show up on screen in HD. But yeah, the handheld definitely helps tell that story. If it had all been on sticks, yeah, it would have been boring.
So I think this was a much better entry than the first one. I like the storyline on the first one, like the emotional appeal, but I thought this was a much better entry for what we're looking at here. I did see some tactical level things that kind of bothered me. I thought the audio in the opening was out of sync.
It looked like it, yeah.
The very first thing he says is the lips are moving and it's not in conjunction with the audio. And then the audio mixing as we go into the first little B-roll segment, was kind of wonky, he or she straightened it out as we went through, and it got much better. But it just for it to be the opening part, that part kind of bugged me a little bit. Like you, Sergeant Kurtz, I loved the interview shot with the senior drill guy. I thought that was very well composed, and my eye automatically went to the guy's face, which is what you're looking for. Great depth of field in that interview shot, so I really liked that. And the audio was much cleaner there than in our first entry, so I was glad to see that. Personally, I liked the personal touch of the kid telling us the name of his weapon. I thought that was kind of a neat little inject.
Was it Weenie or Meanie? I couldn't get
Whitney.
it. Whitney, okay. Yeah.
Sounded like a weenie.
Right, yeah, I was like, Weenie. Yeah.
But either way,
but I liked it.
But either way, I thought that was a neat little way to kind of inject some personality and characters to the story. Like you, Sergeant Kurtz, I totally agree. I think this was two separate stories.
Yeah.
And again, with this one, just like the first story, I'm missing that we're the Navy's honor guard team. We are the premier demonstration team for the Navy.
Right.
Something to definitively tell me who you are, because they could be in the Air Force terminology, it could be a wing level, it could be, we really don't get that clarification, and that kind of frustrates me a little bit because it is a really solid piece. I thought some of the shots were a little long to have all that kind of action going on. I would have expected to see more cutaways and some really cool in-action stuff. There was a really long shot of some guy's crotch that kind of bugged me a little bit. I saw what he or she was going for, but they could have just narrowed it down to that where the hand comes down and hits the side and been done with it. So that was a little bit of a long shot for me, but I really liked the, like Mr. Lauterbach was saying, I liked the cadence where he did the really quick sequence of video to the beat of the cadence.
Yeah.
I thought that was really well done. You got to be careful with autofocus. There are a couple blooming autofocus issues where people are moving in and out. You got to lock that down. And then I thought maybe I'm being a little picky. I thought the grandfather thing kind of came out of nowhere, where he starts talking about his great. That seemed like a whole other. That's why I think the petty officer story is separate and unique to. You know what I mean? I get that they were
he
trying
needed more time to develop
exactly.
where he was going, so he kind of shoehorned it in.
And additionally, I think we spent too much time. If you're going to use the petty officer as the focal point, then I think you need to introduce him earlier, because it almost seems like an afterthought at the end. It almost seems like we're transitioning now to a new story, and we really didn't get to really develop that story because we only had 30, 40 seconds to really tell that part. So, but overall, I thought it was a good entry, much better than the first one, and really liked all the nat sound that they injected, the little sound pops here and there. I thought that was a really nice use of audio, which to me is one of those things that is overlooked a lot of times.
Yeah, I think he could have even done more. There was a couple of times where it was wall-to-wall narration, and I still would have liked, even when he was editing to that cadence with the montage, it would have been nice if you could find some natural pauses in the speech on those cuts to just let that cadence breathe a little bit instead of talking over it the whole time. But it shows that they're at least paying attention to it.
I think, the way this is edited, I think there's two stories. I think if you had just moved some pieces around, like I was saying earlier, it could have been that this discipline and what he's overcome, and that's where the grandfather story comes in.
Yeah.
So, excuse me, if you had started it off, I think, where you first say, you see all this training going on, real quick edits, and then you hear him name his gun, right then I'm like, okay, this is interesting. And then he starts building out his story a little bit more, and then you tie it back to the training and why this has evolved him personally. That sets this tone, especially from the military discipline, into it changes the emotion and the dedication and how I'm going to overcome it, how I'm going to take this that I'm learning and apply it to my life.
To me,
that ties them.
To me, this is the prime reason we should be doing the Syracuse program. This is someone that's on the verge. They have all the right tools. They just need something to push them up that next step to get to really creative and well thought out productions. And so, to me, this is a good candidate.
Yep.
I agree.
Would y'all like to provide your scores to me?
This is the overall score.
Yes, sir.
Mine was a 69.
6-9.
10? No, I'm just kidding. 62.
Did it wrong.
That's 65.
Way too nice.
What do you want us to say these as? Like portfolio one?
Whatever Whatever works for you, sir. You can even
On the
just put
desktop here.
1 or 2. Yes, sir. Just on the desktop.
I did save as. Oh, there it is.
Then you got me scared.
I
don't wanna hit the
I was
close
like,
button.
because I was looking for this.
Yeah.
But you did.
Yeah, I did 4
You
probably one.
saved.
It's like, now I don't want to hit the submit button there.
Broadcaster 2. We're waiting on Sergeant Kurtz.
Technology stuff has me all.
Holy spandangle computer.
Populated.
You're doing a great job, Airman Johnson. I mean, phenomenal.
The talking can slow down a little bit. Though.
We're the judges.
This is portfolio 3. Submission 1 is a video feature story.
You threw us
We went out
the
of
curveball.
Originally, I didn't want to go into medicine because you had to do 4 years of college, 4 years of medical school, and then 3 years of residency training. So it's like 11 years before you even set hands on your first patient. But now that I'm a doc and I can see I can help people, it makes me happy. I do it because I love the military mission. There's a higher calling, so you're working as a team for a higher goal, and I love that aspect.
Great, because one of our guys came in yesterday.
Dr. Ronson is one of our providers here. She's one of the flight surgeons that work here. Most definitely in the top 5 of providers that I've worked with, not only for knowledge-wise, but for caring. She cares about her patients, and it shows. It's doing not only what is necessary, but just what's right, and just very, very caring. She's a good provider.
Deploy, yes, ma'am.
Once people hear that you're a doctor, they just let you into their lives. It's amazing. Like, I'll be in the post office and, hey, doc, I've got that. I'm like, wait, just make an appointment. I'll see you in the office. So it's fabulous that people are willing to share that with you. There's not a doctor I know that doesn't want to see their patients improve. They work really hard to get to that point where they have that knowledge.
She's a pediatrician by trade, so she gets to see a lot of pediatric patients here, which normally wouldn't, but since she has that specialty, we are able to see pediatric patients as well.
When I see people, they're so hopeful and they have confidence in me that I can help them, it makes it all worth it.
She gets to see pediatric patients, and then we see the shot of the giant bald guy. Right?
Identifies as a kindergarten. Well, no.
Poor guy must have been hot. He was sweating like crazy sitting up there.
One note of advice that these screens aren't really color calibrated, so they might look differently on a computer and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
I'm trying to
so-
go back and forth just to get an
Yeah,
average kind of view.
Because on here, like on online, look actually really good compared to the colors. So
Sure. Yeah, it was almost a, that's
You can go and play it again with the guy Johnson if you would, please.
cast.
Originally, I didn't want to go into medicine because you had to do 4 years of college, 4 years of medical school, and then 3 years of residency training. So it's like 11 years before you can set hands on your first patient. But now that I'm a doc and I can help people, it makes me happy. I do it because I love the military mission. There's a higher calling, so you're working as a team for a higher goal, and I love that aspect.
Because one of our guys came in yesterday.
Dr. Hunt is one of our providers here. She's one of the flight surgeons that work here. Most definitely in the top 5 of providers that I work with, not only for knowledge-wise, but for caring. She cares about the patients, and it shows. Doing not only what is necessary, but just what's right, and just very, very caring. She's a good provider.
Once people hear that you're a doctor, they just let you into their lives. It's amazing. Like, I'll be in the post office and, hey doc, I've got that. I'm like, wait, just make an appointment and I'll see you in the office. So it's fabulous that people are willing to share that with you. There's not a doctor I know that doesn't want to see their patients improve. They work really hard to get to that point where they have that knowledge.
She's a pediatrician by trade, so she gets to see a lot of pediatric patients here, which normally wouldn't, but since she has that specialty, we are able to see pediatric patients as well.
When I see people, they're so hopeful and they have confidence in me that I can help them, it makes it all worth it.
Play one more time, Emma Johnson, please.
Originally, I didn't want to go into medicine because you had to do 4 years of college, 4 years of medical school, and then 3 years of residency training. So it's like 11 years before you can set hands on your first patient. But now that I'm a doc and I can help people, it makes me happy. I do it because I love the military mission. There's a higher calling, so you're working as a team for a higher goal, and I love that aspect.
Because one of our guys came in yesterday.
Dr. Hunt is one of our providers here. She's one of the flight surgeons that work here. Most definitely in the top 5 of providers that I work with, not only for knowledge-wise, but for caring. She cares about the patients, and it shows. Doing not only what is necessary, but just what's right, and just very, very caring. She's a good provider.
Once people hear that you're a doctor, they just let you into their lives. It's amazing. Like, I'll be in the post office and, hey doc, I've got that. I'm like, wait, just make an appointment and I'll see you in the office. So it's fabulous that people are willing to share that with you. There's not a doctor I know that doesn't want to see their patients improve. They work really hard to get to that point where they have that knowledge.
She's a pediatrician by trade, so she gets to see a lot of pediatric patients here, which normally wouldn't, but since she has that specialty, we are able to see pediatric patients as well.
When I see people, they're so hopeful and they have confidence in me that I can help them, it makes it all worth it.
Mr. Lauterbach's writing his dissertation.
That was a good email. No, you weren't.
Oh, you want me to do? Okay.
No,
Before we get too far into it, that was an incorrect apostrophe at the very beginning, or am I crazy?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Can you put that back up real quick, so, for the record?
Pause
so that,
it.
Yes.
And just pause it at the opening slide.
Yeah. I'm not a huge fan of opening any kind of story like this with a black and white graphic, but at least get the punctuation correct if you're going to do it. It's not a possessive doctors, it's plural. So yeah, it kills our credibility when we do stuff like that. So we've got to really be careful, and then to submit that to judging to get into the most advanced training that we have, and that'd be the first thing we see. Not great.
It's unfortunate.
So, yeah, but the rest of the piece, I thought they really did a nice job of introducing this person as a character. I feel like I got to know her. It was good soundbite selection. Not the strongest story arc necessarily, beginning, middle, and end. It was more just kind of, again, surface level, even keeled straight through. But for what it was, I feel like I got to know who she is, why she likes doing what she does, and why the people around her appreciate her. The action wasn't there, so you've got to make do with what you have, and I think that they pushed themselves to the limit.
There was an attempt.
Yes, yeah. They definitely could have just kind of settled, and I don't think they settled in terms of just that kind of very sterile, non-dynamic setting. They chose some interesting angles. They got off the sticks, got down low. The framing was a little all over the place for me. Some of it was great. I really liked some of the through the doorway shots, but then when you go into the room, the patient is almost half cut off on the right side of the screen. There were some issues with just way too many dissolves up front for no reason, and then we never like stick to a theme. If you're going to do it for a reason. Some of those dissolves weren't needed. Same with the rack focuses. When you're using a rack focus, you're intentionally drawing your audience's attention away from something to something else in the frame. We all know what it's like to listen to or be listened to on a stethoscope. And they weren't that far away from each other to begin with, so to go from one, from the doctor to the stethoscope, I don't think was really warranted. Also, was she listening to his arm?
It was his back.
Oh, okay.
The second time I watched it, I watched that shot specifically. I too, I was like, I've never seen a doctor put a stethoscope on an arm.
Yeah,
but it was the back.
Bone is really making some weird noises. No, okay, then yeah, that makes more sense. The back. But yeah, good soundbite selection. The audio quality on the secondary interview, I don't think was as good as the first. I noticed a slight hiss. For that, I'm not really sure what caused that. Overall, pretty solid. Nothing really groundbreaking, but again, for what it was and what they had to work with, I thought that they had some interesting choices and made the attempt. So.
No, I feel like it was very well done in getting me to understand the character from a verbal storytelling sense, but I didn't ever buy into the character. I would have, one, get her out of a swivel chair. That's very distracting.
Yep.
To get her out of the office
cubicle.
Even doing a walk and talk through, I mean, it's a little bit more handheld, but being there, like, you get a little bit more of who this person is, rather than just sitting in office. She's medical, you're in a medical environment, even if you walk the halls with her, and, on a gimbal too. And
put her in an operating room or something like that.
I think, plus her personality in the chair didn't
lend itself.
She's bubbly, she's excited, she loves what she does, and she's sitting in a chair. I think you could have done a better choice of getting her character and the way she is in her personality out of that chair. The thing, I did like the rack focus stuff, but I think what happened is, like, there was one shot where they were talking, somebody was talking about her, and it started kind of down on her waist, and it sat there for a couple seconds before the pan went up, and then there were shots that would end that would just hang as somebody left. So the editing could have been tightened up a little bit more to keep the fluid movement going. So that way the use of rack focus, so once you racked over to the stethoscope, you cut out, because you're sitting there, you're lingering
Yeah, it
a little
took
too
a
long.
long time for those to develop.
And then, really, that was it. I mean, I like the story, I like the appreciation. I too, regardless from the apostrophe, I don't like giving away things up front with a camera card. I want you to watch the story and take away that appreciation by the story that I've built for you. I don't want to tell you what you need to feel.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I'm not a big fan of opening graphics like that either, but I will say, after watching the last two products, I get exactly what I'm going to see from the opening graphic, and it sets the stage, so I know what we're getting into. So that's kind of what was missing from those previous two products. So from that perspective, I really like it, but with you, with the punctuation, that's just really unfortunate.
Well, it looks like there was a lot of natural lighting.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
So the use of that was very well done.
So I liked, the thing for me in this story that really sells the whole thing, believe it or not, is the audio. I feel like she's sitting in the room with me because I can hear every syllable. Even the guy in the operating room, his audio is, you know, that room is obviously echoey and it's still very clear and tangible. So to me, and then in addition to that, the audio weaving, I mean, people fade in and out seamlessly. You don't hear any clicks, you don't hear any harsh edits, and to me, that makes all the difference. That tells me somebody took the time to do all the audio weaving correctly. So they've either just have a natural talent for it, or somebody has mentored them very well that they monitored their audio to that level. And so as an old guy, that really resonated with me. I liked the little touches of like the rack focus on the stethoscope. I liked the nice little camera movement, because without that kind of stuff, this is a really flat story. I mean, it's great that she's energetic, and it's great that that they're telling a story about how cool it is to be a military doctor, but without some of those little artistic touches, I think this is a very, very flat story. I agree with you on the interview shot. I mean, you have control of the entire environment. It seems like you had a whole day probably to sit with this lady, and so to do the interview in a cubicle is a little disappointing. I thought that what they did in the cubicle, I thought it worked okay, but it would have been much better to go do it somewhere in her element or a walk and talk or something a little more creative. And it's obvious this person, whoever it is, has some serious creative talent. So it surprises me that the interview was so kind of static. And then I also thought there was a lot of thought put into tracking the individual. When you're following one person, it's very easy to get juxtaposition wrong or have jump cuts, or I thought they did a pretty good job of getting her from room to room and without having kind of some weird edits where you're like, wow, how did she get there? And so I thought that was very well thought out. So overall, I thought it was a great story, and definitely somebody who's really passionate about the craft, which is to me stands out.
Now I'm like a really, really picky filmmaker when it comes to music, because music, it's almost like in film, it is like a band.
Yeah.
You know, the music is the drums. It is the
Heart and
rhythm.
soul, yeah.
So I felt, I mean, I get that this music was right from a tonal perspective, but the repetitiveness of it, started to distract me away from it. Plus, I think there could have been a turn to where you don't just lay one music track underneath. There's a way that you could start off with a tone and then turn that music towards the end to drive the emotion on home.
That's a good point.
So again, I think good choice in music, because it's kind of just a feel-good piece. But the repetitiveness of that piano started to wear on me and distract me away. I started to be like, okay.
You're glad it's not any longer than it was.
Yeah. So, and then, but I'm also a big supporter of multiple, especially you go 2-3 minute piece. Find a point where the music changes. There's a breath that gets taken, a beat that gets taken to help drive the audience into that turn to the final piece.
We talked about this a couple years ago. We want to test ourselves in a named PACOM exercise like Hope North.
When we deploy, we're going to the desert all the time, but coming here and actually seeing that different terrain, actually seeing that jungle, it really makes us reevaluate the way we operate.
This is 0 Alpha over.
We're here at Cope North 2017 to display the first ever Joint and Combined Security Forces field training exercise.
Amparos is this.
Any type of natural disaster or contingency takes place within the Pacific, we're not going to be fighting or we're not going to be handling that incident alone. It's extremely important to find that interoperability with our Pacific partners to ensure that when something does happen, we can work together. So to have them come out, to have a trilateral, multinational exercise is the foundation to build from. but it's extremely important within the Pacific that took place this year.
It was really good to see how things worked from the United States. With the exchange of TTPs and tactics, in the future, if we were to do something like this, which is very likely to work with our allies, we don't have to go through the crawling and the walking stage. We can just jump straight into it and not have to worry about the little issues. So it's very important for us in the future that we can just go straight into missions and not have to worry about joining together and sorting out our differences.
Looking back on my experience, our time has changed. Mission is not getting any easier for our airmen. So for them to take lessons learned and apply those to today's operations, it's just an incredible experience for both them and I.
Cope North as a whole, yes, it's definitely an opportunity that I think everyone should get. It's tough, it was grueling, tiring. I'll remember that. When Cope North comes back next year, I'll know. I'm ready for it.
Something happens in this theater where it's, a balloon goes up and we're in a certain place to be able to support a host nation and be able to mesh that together, and as a front, as a multinational team, to be able to stop whatever enemy forces that are coming at us.
今回はオブザーバーとして参加しましたが、来年の訓練には可能ならば3カ国でこのような警備訓練が実施できれば、さらに我々の能力向上に資するものと考えます。
We're very excited to be here and have this much integration into this level. And so we look forward to continuing this effort and making sure that it's a long-standing initiative as a part of Cope North in the future.
Making an assumption, and I don't know if we know the answer, that they just shot the interviews.
I would assume they shot everything. It's an exercise, so there's indoor parts, planning, and all that kind of stuff. And then there'll be outdoor stuff where they're actually in the field doing the rest.
Just wanted to get my assumption of it.
Okay.
In the SOP, there's the person the nominee has to have shot the majority of the work when it comes to the video portion of it.
Cool. We restarted. Please.
We talked about this a couple of years ago. We want to test ourselves in a named PACOM exercise like Cope North.
When we deploy, we're going to the desert all the time, but coming here and actually seeing that different terrain, actually seeing that jungle, it really makes us reevaluate the way we operate.
We're here at Cope North 2017 to display the first ever joint combined security forces field training exercise.
Amparos is this.
Any type of natural disaster or contingency takes place in the Pacific, we're not going to be fighting or we're not going to be handling that incident alone. It's extremely important to find that interoperability with our Pacific partners to ensure that when something does happen, we can work together. So to have them come out, to have a trilateral, multinational exercise, is the foundation to build from, but it's extremely important within the Pacific.
10 seconds and then I'll tell you when to pause it. I think you have to play.
Come out to have a trilateral, multinational exercise.
Where are we at? 114? Thank you. You can go ahead and play again. Thank you.
This is the foundation to build from, but it's extremely important within the Pacific that took place this year.
It was really good to see how things worked from the United States. With the exchange of TTPs and tactics, in the future, if we were to do something like this, which is very likely to work with our allies, we don't have to go through the crawling and the walking stage. We can just jump straight into it and not have to worry about the little issues. So it's very important for us in the future that we can just go straight into missions and not have to worry about joining together and sorting out our differences.
Looking back on my experience, our time has changed. Mission is not getting any easier for our airmen. So for them to take lessons learned and apply those in today's operations, it's just an incredible experience for both them and I.
Cooking with the whole, yes, it's definitely an opportunity that I think everyone should get. It's tough, it's grueling, tiring. I'll remember that. When Cooking North comes back next year, I'll know I'm ready for it.
Something happens in this theater where it's, a balloon goes up and we're in a certain place to be able to support a host nation and be able to mesh that together, and as a front, as a multinational team, to be able to stop whatever enemy forces that are coming at us.
今回はオブザーバーとして参加しましたが、来年の訓練には可能ならば3カ国でこのような警備訓練が実施できれば、さらに我々の能力向上に資するものと考えます。
We're very excited to be here and have this much integration into this level. And so we look forward to continuing this effort and making sure that it's a long-standing initiative as a part of Code North in the future.
Go ahead and play it again, Airmen Johnson, if you would, please.
We talked about this a couple years ago. We want to test ourselves in a named PACOM exercise like Code North.
Where we're going to the desert all the time, but coming here and actually seeing that different terrain, actually seeing that jungle, it really makes us reevaluate the way we operate.
We're here at Code North 2017 to display the first ever joint and combined security forces field training exercise.
Tomorrow's is this any type of natural disaster or contingency takes place in the Pacific, we're not going to be fighting or we're not going to be handling that incident alone. It's extremely important to find that interoperability with our Pacific partners to ensure that when something does happen, we can work together. So to have them come out, to have a trilateral, multinational exercise is the foundation to build from, but it's extremely important within the Pacific that took place this year.
It was really good to see how things worked from the United States with the exchange of TTPs and tactics. In the future, if we were to do something like this, which is very likely to work with our allies, we don't have to go through the crawling and the walking stage. We can just jump straight into it and not have to worry about the little issues. So it's very important for us in the future that we can just go straight into missions and not have to worry about joining together and sorting out our differences.
Looking back on my experience, our time has changed. Mission is not getting any easier for our airmen. So for them to take lessons learned and apply those in today's operations, it's just an incredible experience for both them and I.
Cooking with the whole, yes, it's definitely an opportunity that I think everyone should get. It's tough, it's grueling, tiring. I'll remember that. When Cooking North comes back next year, I'll know I'm ready for it.
Something happens in this theater where it's, a balloon goes up and we're in a certain place to be able to support a host nation and be able to mesh that together, and as a front, as a multinational team, to be able to stop whatever enemy forces that are coming at us.
今回はオブザーバーとして参加しましたが、来年の訓練には可能ならば3カ国でこのような警備訓練が実施できれば、さらに我々の能力向上に資するものと考えます。
We're very excited to be here and have this much integration into this level. And so we look forward to continuing this effort and making sure that it's a long-standing initiative as a part of Code North in the future.
Can you back it up about 30 seconds, 40 seconds?
では可能ならば3カ国でこのような警備訓練が実施できればさらに我々の能力向上に資するものと考えます。
We're very excited to be here and,
Yeah, I need to go farther,
and
I'm
have
sorry.
this much integration into
Go
this
about like a
level.
minute,
And so we look
something
forward
like
to
that.
continuing this effort and
I want to
making
get
sure
to
that
that
it's a long-standing
majors interview.
Apply those to today's
That's fine.
operations. It's just an incredible experience for both them and I.
Code North as a whole, yes, it's definitely an opportunity that I think everyone should get. It's tough, it's grueling, tiring. I'll remember that. When Code North comes back next year, I'll know. I'm ready for it.
Just stand by the pause.
Something happens in this theater where it's, a balloon goes up and we're in a certain place to be able to support a host nation and be able to mesh that together.
Is that a cultural thing? Her last name's not capitalized. That bugs me.
It's a capital I, no? Is it Yasu?
It's either an I
Or a lowercase L.
I thought it was a lowercase L.
I'm hoping it's a capital I.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if it was a capital I.
You can't
Tricky
tell
one, yeah.
her.
It could go either way.
It's curved, so you can't even tell her name tag.
Give him a bit of the
That's what I was gonna say. I have other issues with the graphics apart from if the spelling right or not.
Go ahead, Sergeant Kurtz, if you're ready.
Sure. So I'm kind of, I don't know where to start. There's the temptation when you're doing stories like this to kind of bite off more than you can chew, and I believe that's what happened here. Pre-production on something like this is paramount, and I don't think that there was maybe enough time spent with your client managing expectations and figuring out what your focus is going to be. You can't do in 2 to 3 minutes a story that's going to tell the whole story of what this exercise
Of a
is.
giant joint exercise.
So you've got to pick your spots. And I get the temptation of trying to, you're spending a lot of time with these people, you want to do them justice, you want to give everybody their 5 minutes or whatever of fame. But so many different voices really muddle the message. And I have watched this 3 times now, and I still don't really know what they did other than learn how to work together, which any exercise accomplishes. And you can tell me that in the first 2 seconds, and then actually get into the story. But I saw some amazing potential for some really cinematic storytelling within this piece. Had you just kind of focused on one of the scenarios of like, okay, what are they trying to accomplish right here? They're in a firefight, they're clearing jams, and you made it look like Michael Bay shot this thing. It looked amazing. I just want to know what it is they're doing and why they're doing it and what the emotions they're going through while they were in that suck, as it were, instead of directly going right back into the command briefing room with her and just completely suck me out of whatever emotional connection you were trying to give me with this piece. So yeah, I feel like a lot of the tools are there, but this person needs some mentorship in terms of finding that story, finding that focus, and a lot of that, again, pre-production is just as big of a skill as anything else we do. You've got to get on the same page with your client, figure out what your story is before you go out there and really start trying to tell it. Technically, I like the attempt at a lot of these 2-camera interviews, but I don't think they were executed very well. You had a lot of crossing the axis, a lot of 30-30 rule violations where, yes, the angle changed, but the focal length didn't at all. So really,
almost makes it a jump cut.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of 2-camera interviews. If you're going to do interviews, if you're going to have, which again, you don't need this much talking head in a piece like this. You've got the action. Let's see the action. But if you're going to do the 2-camera interviews, just do them correctly. Starting off, I did not get the color fading out right at the beginning.
I thought it almost looked comic bookish. Yeah. Like it was like it transitioned from like a really weird like posterization comic book effect to.
Yeah, it didn't seem necessary to me at all. graphics. This is something we do not get a ton of training in at all, and it should be a point of emphasis, and maybe we can actually talk to Syracuse folks about, you know, incorporating that into part of the curriculum in the future, because more and more graphics are super important in pieces where, you know, you're scrolling through your Facebook feed and these videos are auto-playing and you don't even have the audio to benefit you at first. And sometimes the first thing that you see that may make you decide to invest the next 3 minutes of your life in this video is going to be what it says on screen, not so much of what it's showing or what you're hearing or not hearing. So these graphics are very basic to almost the point of amateurish. Yep. And for as much real estate as they're taking up on screen, again, you don't want to have, you know, serif fonts. And this one's not too bad in terms of the serifs, but yeah, it just, they don't do anything for me. They're taking up too much space, so it'll make them look better. Yeah, I think that's, I'm gonna kind of use my time. You guys go for it.
Yeah, no, a couple things for me. I mean, I kind of get where the story was going. I didn't get the full story, and I think too, again, the choice of interviews, where you're going to interview, always can either enhance or break your story. In this case, a couple things about the interviews. I think one, it looks like they were shot at 30, while the B-roll was shot at 24. So the interviews come across as home video looking, where the B-roll's coming across as Michael Bay. And I don't know if they switched their FPS on that, but you can tell when you're looking, it's like, this is okay. Second, you're in this training situation, you have all this cool outside rugged look, and again, we're in offices, we're, you know, conference rooms. I think this is a perfect place for a handheld interview, because you're in a handheld environment with all this combat. You're going to keep your tone, or this combat training. All of a sudden, you go to these sticks, and it's like tone changes, pacing changes.
Well, and it's literally, what are you doing? Right now, the aggressors are coming through the woods. We're trying to stop their infiltration. I mean, that's really what's missing.
So I felt like I was watching a KSAT news report where these are the anchors out in the field, and they're just rolling in the B-roll to their story. So I'm not getting what my emotional or takeaway, not me as the viewer, but the individuals that are training, what was their emotional takeaway of this experience? This is one that I actually feel like the music, I get the dip to blacks up front, I didn't get the black and white, but I thought the pacing and the editing to the music helped weave the story. At first, the voice, I get maybe why they chose it, because it's a multinational type thing, so maybe the voice, it's a multinational type music. But I really like the tempo of it built, and then you can hear it start to turn right at the end to be that final period on it there too. One of the biggest things that I have was the color grading throughout the whole thing was all over the place. Yep. There was no consistency. I love the color grading of the shots in the slow-mo where it looks like the guy's gun was jammed.
That was the best part of it.
Did it, either they shot at sunset or dusk, or did a day for night technique on the stuff that had the blue tint over it. So everything was all over the place. And then my biggest, with interviews on 2-camera, I agree with you, especially if you're going to do a harsh profile, don't make that your first shot, because you want to see your character, know your character.
I thought those should have been reversed.
Right.
I agree with you that the framing there need to be some focal change so that you don't get kind of the same viewpoint, but I thought those were backwards.
But that's just me personally, I don't like dissolves or really, really profile stuff. But I think one thing I did see on it, that if I was just looking at it from a technical standpoint of, there's some really creative stuff in this individual. The ability, I think right now it's the lacking of guidance or experience of seeing these things and getting feedback, but I definitely, the cinematography part of it.
This is a diamond in the rough for sure. And just for the audience, maybe who's watching, like my kind of rule of thumb with 2-camera interviews is that one shot is for environment, the other one's for emotion. Okay, so you've got a wide and a tight. The cameras do not need to be far apart at all. They can almost be touching. It's the focal length that actually enhances the
But I get
change.
serious points for someone who goes to the extra effort of setting up a second camera, because
absolutely.
it's double the work, double the monitoring, and so I at least like that they attempted it. So that to me really stands out.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm just being critical though, because overall though, when I look at the story, I want to know a little bit that beginning, middle, and end. I'm feeling like I'm trying to figure it out, and I didn't really leave it with a solid.
Angles hitting you at once. It's not really.
But if I were to look at it from a whole and said, this is somebody I'd like to talk to, because there's an ability in there, they just seem like they maybe haven't been through a lot of insights training or something. So yeah.
Well, I'm glad we're all in lockstep because everything you guys have said I agree with. To me, this is so that when you go, we've all either covered these or sent airmen to cover these, and there's always the cool stories are the ones where you can tell they went out and shot. I'll bet there is a story out there of when they went out and covered the folks with the weapons and out in the jungle and all that. I'll bet that's its own story somewhere, whether it was this person who shot it or someone else. But this, to me, is the piece that the leadership wants.
Yes.
The overarching, we talk to everybody, and this is kind of like the whole philosophy behind the thing. To me, not nearly as interesting as maybe one of the elements. And so to me, like you said, there's just too much going on, and it just kind of goes back and forth between multiple themes. There's no real consensus on what we're really talking about other than the totality of this giant exercise. And then again, when you take really cool video of like being out in the jungle or people in, even in briefing rooms, some of that briefing stuff is cool because it's interoperability between multiple nations, multiple services. I even like that, okay. But when you come out of that into interviews in conference rooms and we got a flag sticking out of her head and that kind of stuff, boy, it really just takes the juice out of it and makes it not near as visually appealing, not near as good of a story. But this is certainly not as good a story as the first one in terms of quality of central character, quality of really telling a story. But for what it is, it's probably made all the leadership gooey-eyed because they love this kind of stuff. But in terms of storytelling, definitely not as good as the first story.
Well, one thing I do recognize though is that the individual has an eye for realizing their environment, because if you look at the doctor story, I mean, there's certain ways, like we're talking about, we could shoot the interviews differently, and I think the consistency I'm seeing is the interviews really need to be thought out about how do they match the emotion of your environment. But if you look at their ability to see, okay, this is a doctor story, this is a exercise story, you can see that their mind shifts. They don't just consistently shoot the same type of feel. They try and get into that. The interviews would be the biggest thing. Like, learn your interviewer before you shoot them, know your environment you're going to be in, and fit them into it. Because the minute you just sit them down in a room, a conference room, boardroom, flags, it becomes more like they're a news journalist rather than a part of the doc, rather than a part of the story.
And even before that, having that tight, solid focus, because you can go out and interview 15 people, but you don't need to use all of them at all. You can just glean from it information that will educate and inform how you edit the piece, and which strong points that you have from your 2 to 3 max characters for a piece like this. I think there was 7 different interviews in this, something like that. It's just far too much.
It was a lot. And especially the guy who gets the white wall, the harsh shadow, that I would have canked that one just from visuals alone. So, we're ready for scores, started at this.
Who wants to go first?
I had a 67.
He's trained me well my first day at the Air Force, so I'm 67 too.
That's what I'm talking about.
Nice.
I'll be the jerk. I got a 64.
64. Did you notice that?
Yeah, basically.
Well, pause.
2-minute break. Break. I'll go too.
Yeah, so that's those blank firing adapters. That always happens.
Is that what it is? Okay.
But it is a choice to show that as part of the story. Everybody's playing a jam.
Well, and that was my concern. It's like, oh, that's a great, like, let's stop, people trying to take over. Air Force is the greatest, Air Force, or the United States Air Force is the greatest Air Force in the world. But you're gonna see it. I thought it was in once, not more than once. Right. The other thing I was saying, I don't
The 20th AMU definitely works at night. We have a 24/7 operation, so every hour of the day and night is covered. We are always ready, mentally, physically ready to get these jets done. Once we ever get the call, we're ready to roll. We at crew chiefs, we come in a little bit early, get ready, and prepare ourselves for roll call. After roll call, then we definitely go inside waiting for production to hand out the assignments and whatnot. Once we hand out the assignments, we head out to the flight line. We take care of business the way we do, you know, and as champions, as warriors, and we get everything ready to go, whether it be getting them ready for morning flies or, you know, flying them right there on our shift or catching them right there on our shift, whatever the case may be. As the morning rolls around, we start doing turnover to get the day shift guys ready to go. So as soon as they hit out the door, they hit the ground running, and try to set them up for success as best as we can, so we can all go home and do it again the next day. The more hours we can get into fixing these aircraft, the better. We also chase a 12-hour fix rate, so it would make more sense to cover every hour of the day and night with operations, maintenance operations going on out there. Throughout the night, it's the best time, in my opinion, to get the work done, to get them ready, whether it be through fixing various mechanical problems and whatnot, or just doing the inspections to have them ready for air crew and the day shift crew chiefs. I think they know that they're on one of the best shifts. They realize that we have an elite shift. We have a lot of elite players on the team, and I know that they're pretty proud of that. It's happened in the past where at night we're putting the jets to bed, and then I get a call to come in for a meeting. We got the call that we need to get these jets ready right now. And I could not necessarily explain that to my airmen, to my crew chiefs. I had to keep it secret. But the good thing is that they were smart enough to know that if we put these jets to bed, but now we're all of a sudden generating them, something was going on. And they were able to react quickly. The way we reacted was outstanding. It was great. I felt proud of my guys that we were able to jump to the jet and get the things ready. You know, undo the things that we did. I feel proud that I'm able to contribute. The team that I have, that we're able to contribute at moment's notice. They realize that we have an elite shift. We have a lot of elite players on the team, and I know that they're pretty proud of that. It's happened in the past where at night we're putting the jets to bed, and then I get a call to come in for a meeting. We got the call that we need to get these jets ready right now. And I could not necessarily explain that to my airmen, to my crew chiefs. I had to keep it secret. But the good thing is that they were smart enough to know that if we put these jets to bed, but now we're all of a sudden generating them, something was going on. And they were able to react quickly. The way we reacted was outstanding. It was great. I felt proud of my guys that we were able to jump to the jet and get the things ready. You know, undo the things that we did. I feel proud that I'm able to contribute. The team that I have, that we're able to contribute at moment's notice. The 20th AMU definitely works at night. We have a 24/7 operation, so every hour of the day and night is covered. We are always ready, mentally, physically ready to get these jets done. Once we ever get the call, we're ready to roll. We at crew chiefs, we come in a little bit early, get ready, and prepare ourselves for roll call. After roll call, then we definitely go inside waiting for production to hand out the assignments and whatnot. Once we hand out the assignments, we head out to the flight line. We take care of business the way we do, you know, and as champions, as warriors, and we get everything ready to go, whether it be getting them ready for morning flies or, you know, flying them right there on our shift or catching them right there on our shift, whatever the case may be. As the morning rolls around, we start doing turnover to get the day shift guys ready to go. So as soon as they hit out the door, they hit the ground running, and try to set them up for success as best as we can.
Can you pause?
So we can all go home and do it again the next day.
That's good. Never mind. I'm good.
The more hours we can get into fixing these aircraft, the better. We also chase a 12-hour fixed rate, so it would make more sense to cover every hour of the day and night with operations, maintenance operations going on out there. Throughout the night is the best time, in my opinion, to get the work done, to get them ready, whether it be through fixing various mechanical problems and whatnot, or just doing the inspections to have them ready for air crew and the day shift crew chiefs. I think they know that they're on one of the best shifts. They realize that we have an elite shift. We have a lot of elite players on the team, and I know that they're pretty proud of that. It's happened in the past where at night we're putting the jets to bed, and then I get a call to come in for a meeting. We got the call that we need to get these jets ready right now. And I could not necessarily explain that to my airmen, to my crew chiefs. I had to keep it secret. But the good thing is that they were smart enough to know that if we put these jets to bed, but now we're also generating them, something was going on. And they were able to react quickly. The way we reacted was outstanding. It was great. I felt proud of my guys that we were able to jump to the jet and get the things ready. You know, undo the things that we did. I feel proud that I'm able to contribute. The team that I have, I were able to contribute at moment's notice. The 20-day mule definitely works at night. We have a 24/7 operation, so every hour of the day and night is covered. We are always ready, mentally, physically ready to get these jets done. Once we ever get the call, we're ready to roll. We crew chiefs, we come in a little bit early, get ready, and prepare ourselves for roll call. After roll call, then we definitely go inside, waiting for production to hand out the assignments and whatnot. Once we hand out the assignments, we head out to the flight line. We take care of business the way we do, you know, and as champions, as warriors, and we get everything ready to go, whether it be getting them ready for morning flies or, you know, flying them right there on our shift or catching them right there on our shift, whatever the case may be. As the morning rolls around, we'll start doing turnover to get the day shift guys ready to go. So as soon as they hit out the door, they hit the ground running, and try to set them up for success as best as we can, so we can all go home and do it again the next day. The more hours we can get into fixing these aircraft, the better. We also chase a 12-hour fixed rate, so it would make more sense to cover every hour of the day and night with operations, maintenance operations going on out there. Throughout the night, it's the best time, in my opinion, to get the work done, to get them ready, whether it be through fixing various mechanical problems and whatnot, or just doing the inspections to have them ready for air crew and the day shift crew chiefs. I think they know that they're on one of the best shifts. They realize that we have an elite shift. We have a lot of elite players on the team, and I know that they're pretty proud of that. It's happened in the past where at night we're putting the jets to bed, and then I get a call to come in for a meeting. We got the call that we need to get these jets ready right now. And I could not necessarily explain that to my airmen, to my crew chiefs. I had to keep it secret. But the good thing is that they were smart enough to know that if we put these jets to bed, but now we're also generating them, something was going on. And they were able to react quickly. The way we reacted was outstanding. It was great. I felt proud of my guys that we were able to jump to the jet and get the things ready. You know, undo the things that we did. I feel proud that I'm able to contribute. The team that I have, I were able to contribute at moment's notice.
You ready? Yep. Go ahead. Okay. Very well-crafted piece, I thought. From the storytelling aspect, I thought they focused a little too much on the what and not the why. The sound bites were a little long, could have used a little bit of editing, but I really liked the interview setup, the way they shot that was pretty good. Again, with the 2 camera, I liked the wider shot better where he's looking directly in. I thought the second shot was a little too profile again, but really good attempt, probably the best one we've seen so far with the 2 camera. And just the blackout was an interesting choice. I thought it kind of enhanced it. It was creative, so I liked that. Going back to compare the two with the graphics, these were much cleaner. You know, even though they're again simple, the font choice is can make or break, you know, what your graphics look like. So you still had just a solid white with maybe a black stroke or drop shadow, but just the font choice alone, these look much cleaner than the last package we were talking about with the graphics. So the Nat sound, man, there was a lot of opportunity there, and he didn't, or she didn't capitalize on hardly any of it. I appreciate that it was there, and it just left me wanting to really let it breathe. There were some just prime opportunities to use it as that punctuation. When you're closing that drawer, but he's again talking over it as it happens, just move that over so he stops talking, and then you hear it, and that punctuates, and then you can move on. Make use of that. You definitely captured it. You know, let's see that payoff, and let that Nat sound breathe a little bit and exist on its own. The handheld work was much superior in this piece than some of the other ones we've seen so far. What I was talking about earlier with, you know, yes, handheld, use it, but use it effectively. I didn't see a lot of that jittery handheld use that we did in some of the other pieces. All the handheld was very smooth, effective, purposeful, and well done. Closing shot for me, I get what they were going for, but I thought it was a little weak. It took us right back into that hangar.
That's exactly what I wrote.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to do, so like what he did with the interview, almost like a video portrait. Some of those secondary characters, and especially when you're talking about a team, maybe shoot a few more of those video portraits, and when he's closing with, you know, this is a great team, show me maybe a quick montage of who those team members are. I saw them working, but I didn't really get attached to any of them because, again, it's just that one guy talking about him and his team. You know, it was almost like out of order the way that last shot took us back into like the pre-briefing or whatever. I'm not really sure what it was, but not terrible, but a little weak. And just overall, the editing I thought was really solid. Maybe lacked a little bit of creativity. It was just very straightforward, but I like the use of time lapse and the fact that they were shooting at night and were able to pull off the quality of video they did. You know, they definitely know their gear, so that was helpful. Overall, very solid. Like it a lot.
Yeah, that's I didn't get the black background.
Okay.
First off, let me say that the technical challenge that this crew had, and this individual had, shooting at night, there's noise in the film, but it's expected noise. It is not like overbearing. You're like, okay, they're ISO, everyone's not set. The use of that camera work, and there's one shot in there that I absolutely love. I don't know if they're in the kitchen or something, but he's shooting through like a cutout, and he's got somebody's forehead or somebody's head in the foreground. You see the other person, but just that, I don't know, I saw that shot and I wanted to pause on it and say that was really, really creative. I saw a lot of that. I saw a lot of the camera angles, a lot of creativity of the eye, of getting in there and finding stuff. But yeah, I didn't get the shooting on the black. Again, there was so many different environments that they had. I felt like this is his team. This is what they do. I want to see texture.
Back up. What was that? It's in this sequence, I think. It's not this one, right? It's when they're at the cage.
Yeah.
It's like the next shot after when we come back.
Okay, it's in here.
We might have already missed it. It's where they're at the cage and you see the sign on top and then the heads.
Yeah, that was beautiful. So I guess what also on the interview, while we're looking for that, what gets me on the is have your subject sit up a little bit more.
I think it's further back here.
He looks a little bit, he looks a little bit frumpy. He doesn't look.
There, that was it right there. No, go back at the beginning. It was back at the beginning where you clicked. It was on it. Right after this.
So, but yeah, the Nat sound, much greater opportunity for the individual to use that to help build the environment to get the texture in. The music made me feel very ominous, very nervous, but this gentleman's also talking about the stresses that they're going through.
Yeah.
So I get you were trying to set this tone, but it was maybe a little too much. Find a balance on that. And then I didn't get why the music dropped out for a long time. and then came back later with that little water drop sound.
Yeah, and that would have been the time to use that nat sound, like put us right in that environment.
So it got really quiet, really got empty. It wasn't driving me. I love the time-lapse piece. I love just the whole overall camera selection, camera angle selection is really great.
Yes.
I really, really like that. I would want to know why the choice for the black background. If you're trying to drive an emotion out of that, you know, but and maybe also he's just kind of chilled.
So
I thought you guys never.
Always sitting in the position.
We're all over the map on this one because to me I didn't like this. To me, it felt like they went and interviewed somebody, and then they just went and put a bunch of wallpaper video over the top.
That shot.
And see, that shot
beautiful.
Bugged the bejesus out of me.
Dude, that is like, that's beautiful.
I actually wrote them. I really.
Far out, man.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting that we're all over the map on this one because
well, that's creativity.
It is, and there's some subjective stuff in here that easily could sway one person one way and one the other. So that's it's just inherent in the business. But I really didn't like pulling a Pro Super out of the environment and put him on a black background. Now I thought it was well executed. It's a really nice shot for what it is. But to me, they needed some kind of cool, like him in his work environment, or even a walk and talk in this instance, where he's busy managing the folks, but I took a few minutes here to tell you what we're doing, kind of thing, would have resonated more with me than just somebody sitting in a black room that was obviously created for that creative look. I also had issues with the two cameras. Again, I give props for somebody who uses two cameras because it's double the work, but that we cross the axis. It's very awkward to be on the left side of his nose and then he's on the right, and the focal length didn't change enough to really make it worthwhile. So that really bothered me. I even wrote at 57 seconds, there's a guy at a counter that's framed really weird.
So let me just so if the person happens to be watching or they watch it later, from a creative standpoint, the rule of thirds in this is absolutely amazing right now, what he's done. I don't know if he or she did. I don't know if they intentionally.
If they did it intentionally, that's the question I would want to know.
You took the straight lines and put it center frame, and then you have foreground elements that are creating this depth, but where's your eye being drawn to? Right to your character. The dead space up top is nice. They have this real challenge where they're at, given all this stuff going on. But yeah, this is like, I mean, when I saw this image, I was like, this is something you see on Getty.
The only thing I don't like about it is the sign, because my eye goes to the sign.
Oh.
And so to me, it's distracting that.
Clean your environment a little bit.
Well, I mean, it is what it is, and if they really thought to that level to have it, using leading lines in the composition, if they thought like you are talking about, I give them serious props.
Yeah.
But more than anything, to me, I think they saw the sign and they wanted the sign in the shot and the counter folks, and so to me that the brightness of the light over the guy's head is where I should be looking, but because the sign is white too, it's competing for me.
So if you clean this sign out, this is
I would be much more. Yeah.
Yep. So that explains a little bit more where you were looking at, where I was actually just looking at composition of it. Is like, that's very cool. Hope that helps the individual.
Okay.
And I think they are watching because Barksdale chimed in and said that they're watching. 5 people are watching, and that's where this came from. So.
That's good.
Okay.
So little strike.
The closing shot for me too didn't work. I'm in agreement. I think we needed more. The production super just wasn't animated enough, and he wasn't. His passion didn't come through as much as I know that it is there, because you can tell he loves his job, but his passion didn't come through as much. And I think we needed more of his airmen talking about, what it's like working for him and what it's like in that environment. I think that would have made a little bit more robust piece and a little more intriguing. But overall, I agree. One of the things I commented on, shooting at night is tough. And they had multiple light sources. You have the freaking sodium lights, and then you have the blue lights they're using, and flashlights, and but all of them were exposed well and had good focus, with the exception of the opening shot. That was really grainy. Compared to, and so I maybe it's the monitor that over accentuates it that we're watching it on, but there were other shots that were super crystal clear. And some of the time-lapse stuff was just gorgeous. So to see that opening shot was kind of grainy. It threw me off when we first started, but it got better as we went along. So,
going back to what I first started about it being more about the what than the why, you know, that's an interview skill. You want the person you're talking to explaining why they do things. That's going to drive, you know, the story. The what is nice to have, but it's not going to connect me as a person. You know, knowing why they do it and what they get out of it emotionally. Like you touched on it, but the proportion was backwards. I think.
Well, and
about the why.
I think almost like when we talked about the last product, that exercise coverage, we see people doing some really cool things. Just give me a 5-second. What are you doing? Oh, we have to put this back in. This plane's getting ready to go up. You know, just something so that I kind of get a sense of the environment and what they're doing and why this is important. But because otherwise, to me, it just seems like great B-roll slapped over the top of some guy talking. So.
Yeah, that was the big disconnect for me on the black background. Is it just felt like, okay, I sat down with this guy, we had a conversation, now I got to go figure out what to put over it.
Yeah.
So instead of going out in there and, I mean,
connecting him to the environment.
Yeah, I get it. Being on the base here, there's a lot of noise that you have to compete with, especially out there with, you know, the planes and stuff. But even sitting in there in that moment of him working on something, I saw him on at the top of a staircase on one of the things, even talking to him in that environment, you can build your other nat sounds around it to support the fact that your audio is struggling because of your environment and make me feel like I'm there.
Well, we do that all the time. Jet noise is inherent in just about everything we do. So
yeah, and make me feel like I'm there. Let me see some of that stress.
I mean, even this little back shot, I mean, you can see that there's some interesting environment there that you could have placed in there, and it would look gorgeous. And yeah, I agree with you.
Is this where we do get out over the?
It is. This is where we move the tail all the way. Right. WWE.
We can all lose like that.
He's a hair puller. That's why.
Much more well-trained than I am.
All right, cool. We're ready to go to the next one, Airman Johnson.
Final submission is a video spot.
SP.
You play it again, please. Again, please. Can you keep the when you play it, keep your mouse on it so I can see the time code, so I can reference certain places in the, you know what I'm saying? start, Kurt?
Yeah, I'm gonna make some more notes. We're gonna start talking about it. I'm not really sure this is a spot, although I don't know what else you would necessarily call it. There's only so many categories. It feels like you produced like a 10-minute piece, and this was just the intro chopped off the front of it and presented as a standalone. It doesn't work for me at all. So there's not really a story here, other than the Global Strike Challenge happened. And here's a bunch of shots. Like, they literally make apps that can do this. So it has a soundtrack, it edits to the beat, you just throw your clips in there and it spits that out. I'm not really seeing anything that's standing out to me about, from a storytelling or, technical aspect of like, what is this product, I guess I'm trying to put it in context. So if I came across this on like Facebook, which is where most of our stuff is winding up, or YouTube, and I'm scrolling past it and this starts playing, the most important part of this is what is the headline of this piece? Like, click here to read about, or so it would work in that regard, I guess, as like just an interest piquer in terms of find out what happened at Global Strike Challenge.
That's exactly what I think. I think it's like an image spot.
Yeah.
So it's like, this is who we are, now click to find out more.
Sure.
I would buy that.
Okay, yeah, and if that's the context of it, you definitely need whatever context this was in, and we don't have that, so I'm gonna make an educated guess that's probably what this was. But as a, it's just very basic.
It's almost like clickbait.
Yeah,
to me.
Yeah, I'm not in love with it. I don't hate it. That it was, for what it was shot well. They did a little bit of creativity with the speed ramping to show kind of some process there with the beat of the music.
Well, one thing, I mean, yeah, there's some nice camera work, but one thing I saw as far as the editorial prowess is that rhythm editing, that to the beat. I like in some of the places where they use the ramp ups, but it started to get a little overused. And then you got to be really careful when undercranking. Oh, sorry, the old
sure.
thing, to when speeding people up.
Yep.
They set on one shot and the dude's like this. That's you can do it for effect to get there, but as soon as you get there, get back to your normal speed. I don't understand what it's for, but I'm not Air Force. So.
Well, you know what would help that? A single soundbite from anybody. We don't have to see their face, but somebody saying something impactful about what this is or how it affected them is going to do way more to pique my interest than just.
I would even say just a written narrative.
Yeah,
Well, I think if you had camera cards or single words like a movie trailer make up, and there's different little, text on the screen that just at least sets the context. So I didn't understand the context.
Yeah.
But I looked at after the first pass when I didn't understand the context. I really wanted to look at it more from a technical. I think again, it's really interesting. At some places where the NAT sound came in, rhythmically fit the clanks, the this with the beat. Had from a creative standpoint, you could have listened to your NAT sound environments and made that a part of your music score.
Yeah.
Then it would have actually been like, okay, that's kind of cool. You hear the clank, you hear the
hammer on the anvil kind of thing, yeah.
And then let that be a part. But there was some nicely, whether they were on purpose or accidental, there was some nicely placed NAT sounds to add because that music is very so you could have played that very well.
So to me, it all depends on who the audience is. If it's for an internal audience, they're going to know what this is about and know what people are doing, so it works in that effect. But if it's for external, miss the mark completely because they're not going to have a clue. The only way you're going to get people to watch it is to be like, hey, that's interesting video, because it was visually appealing. I mean, I thought the shots were well composed, really cool action stuff, and it certainly kept me interested visually. But in terms of a message or in terms of getting me to understand, what they want me to do, because spots were supposed to have some kind of call to action. Sure. To me, it would be better to have like some graphics underneath to tell you exactly what's going on or why this is important, or some kind of narrative to also kind of reinforce the message. But I thought overall, I thought the video well shot.
Yeah, I would love to have seen like maybe a bleach bypass, man, or color grade with that kind of highlights where it's a little bit, so because it's some really
contrast.
You got a lot of metal, and if you give it that bleach bypass, it kind of brings out that silver tone to the footage. That would have been a really cool look for it.
I'm colorblind. I'll take your word for it.
Okay.
But so I liked the clothes, the kind of the peel.
I did like that, yeah.
I thought that was a very creative way, and the composition had to be just so for those to work.
Yep.
So I thought that was well thought out and used in that instance. But you know, for my last thought would be that for Syracuse, I would want to see something with more substance.
Yeah.
So I mean, this is, you know, obviously something that they're proud of and something that worked for whatever it was that they were using it for. But for Syracuse, I'd like to see something with a little bit more substance. If we only have two products to go off of, you know, the first one was much more indicative of their shooting style and ability and technical capability.
Yeah, I see a lot of potential in the video, one technical composition, and then editing and some audio there. What I think is that would want to see a growth in over the long haul is thinking about the story.
Yes.
Thinking about the way to tell the story. And to your point on the first one, shooting an interview and then figuring out what to put into it, thinking about why do I want to film it this way, put this person here, and how is it going to drive the emotion.
And I think that's a common theme for all these submissions, and that's what the Syracuse program really is for. It's to take you to that next level as a storyteller. You've got the technical skills to buy your ticket to the program, and that's what you need to focus on if you get there.
Well, and this
storytelling aspect.
Whoever this individual is lucky there's 3 candidates, because you know there's really, it's all in at this point. Because to be honest with you, you know, you look at the criteria of storytelling. What do you put for a score for storytelling?
Yeah.
If there were 4 portfolios, this one probably have to go to the bottom just because one of the criteria, I can't give them a very good score because there is none of it in this particular instance. So
just to let you guys know too, the video spot criteria says the target audience must be identified, and I think you brought that up when you said you didn't know who it was for. And not to contradict, but if we look at a package and you think, you know, they're not ready for the program, and that's part of why we're here too. So just because there's 3.
Yeah, I certainly don't see that they're not ready. I mean, they certainly have skills, and at least they had the other video to go with it, because the other one was, like I said, more indicative of their capability, and I thought that was well worth sending somebody. But I would like to see more meat in a submission in the second product, personally. Scores.
Do y'all need more time to do the whole notes thingy, or are y'all ready to
Oh no, I made a bunch. I got plenty of notes. I had a 60.
59.
And 69.
I was the mean one that time.
You were the mean one.
So that's all the portfolios. So I guess from here, is there anything like you guys want to say before we stop the live broadcast? Is there anything theme wise that you noticed of the packages that you know we could help make improvements for next year, things like that? So
I would like to say to the folks who are watching and listening that I'm really happy the folks that submitted. It's a lot of work to put these packages together. While it may not seem, especially you know, photo is obviously more involved because there's more products, but it's a lot to put your work out there, and especially in this environment where it's live and have your work QC'd on such a large scale for everybody to hear, kind of us tear stuff apart. But I give serious props to folks who put their work out there and want to have it evaluated and look at it. So thanks for submitting your stuff.
For anybody who submitted or who hopes to submit in the future, you know, one of the main things we're looking for is that storytelling ability, to see that you have internalized what you learned at Dinfos, but moved beyond that in terms of like the things that you were taught with package construction, the very traditional broadcast style. We're looking more for now, you know, storytelling and more of a production or cinematic style. The tools are there, the training isn't always. So you have to take it upon yourself to get to that point, or at least show that you're progressing towards that point. A lot of it is your own personal ambition and drive. I think that was demonstrated here today with these submissions. They're on par with what I was expecting, I think, in terms of somebody who's at that point in their career where they're ready to stretch their neck out and try to make that leap. So that's good. disappointed that there's only 3, well 4, but really only 3 entries. I mean, I was expecting 4, but maybe 4 times that. I mean, you know, as a supervisor, you owe it to your airmen to talk this program up, even if you've never been, but especially if you have been. I mean, I'd be very disappointed to know there's folks out there that have been through Syracuse and didn't encourage their airmen to put in for this. If they're eligible, I mean, I understand there's criteria that have to be met. This program isn't guaranteed. It can go away. So we have to earn it. You know, we have to make sure that we're putting people up for it that deserve to be there, and that when they get back, that they're benefiting the career field by having been through that experience. So it's something that has to, it has to have a return on investment. And if you don't put anything into an investment, you're not going to get that much return. So I really hope for next year, maybe we need to do a better job of talking it up, publicizing it earlier, but definitely want to see more submissions next year.
Well, and you correct me if I'm wrong, as we move forward to the consolidation, it's only going to get more difficult because you're going to have a larger pool to choose from. There will be the same amount of seats most likely, but you're going to have to compete against more people because you're going to have everybody in one pool. And additionally, you know, when we're looking at a program of this nature, having judged last year, I was actually impressed this year with more creativity, I think people took more chances with like time lapse and you know, creative interview shots and that kind of stuff. So I was happy to see that kind of stuff this year. But again, I'm with you. I really think there are more people out there who are qualified. I think there are more people who should be applying that aren't, that think, hey, I don't have a chance, or maybe think that it is something that it's not. So in that instance, I would recommend, you know, we have Sergeant Salnici in the room, Sergeant Kurtz, who have both attended, but there are other folks out in the career field who are alumni. If you are not reaching out and asking questions of the folks who have already gone through the program and asking them to look through your portfolio before you submit, boy, that just is a failure in my opinion, because when you have that resource available and you're not utilizing it, you're really selling yourself short.
And with that, so moving forward, you know, we have 8 seats a year, 5 are in the still side, 3 are in the motion media side. I believe the split will probably stay about that. This was the first year we allowed for if a photojournalist wanted to put in a motion media package or vice versa, they were allowed to do that. Nobody took advantage of that. We kind of announced it probably last minute, but moving forward, that's an option for anybody. So if there are photojournalists out there that want to put motion media packages in, they're more than welcome to. If there are broadcasters out there that want to put in still packages, they're more than welcome to. So, you know, moving forward, we're going to all be doing the same job really. So, if that's something they're interested in and want to do going forward, then we'll be able to do that. So.
And I'll say, I mean, even though it was 8 years ago now, when I went through Syracuse, the cross-pollination was the biggest boon that I got out of that, was learning how, you know, photojournalists approach a story versus how I did it from a documentation / videography / broadcast background. So, and as we're moving towards that merger of skill sets, you know, don't be afraid to take it upon yourself to do different versions of a story, or, you know, switch over to that still photo mode if you're shooting video, vice versa. You're going to have to learn it eventually. We're already requiring you to do the CDCs from your sister AFSC, so put it into practice, and it'll only increase your chances for something like Syracuse if that's what you're trying to go for. If you can demonstrate that jack of all trades skill set, it's better for your career field, it's better for the Air Force.
Well, thank y'all for having me come over and do this. There are a lot of potential in all 3. I don't know what phase of their learning they are, but to see these just elements, knowing that just keep pushing, keep learning, find people that you can learn from. And nowadays, you know, everything on YouTube, you can go and get inspiration from a lot of different places. So just keep pushing.
Yeah. And we do have those opportunities. I mean, depending on where you're stationed, but you know, you may not have that really qualified or experienced mentor in your shop, but we have workshops like the DC Shoot-Off that you can get to. There's the DoD Worldwide Workshop. YouTube is an insane resource. Just, I mean, if there's any kind of effect that you want to try that you don't know how to do,
there'll be gladly an 11-year-old kid to teach you how to do it.
Exactly. They're on YouTube. You can follow along. But yeah, you've got to have the ambition and the drive to kind of do that on your own. Not that there aren't folks out there that can help you, but you have to reach out in a lot of instances. That's just the way it works. So, but those workshops are great. DC Shoot-Off is awesome. DoD Worldwide, and then, you know, set one up for your own region as well. I mean, there's nothing that says we should be doing this training, so.
Well, you know, and graphics came up quite a few times on here. I mean, there are a lot of times you can, especially when you're in binds too, you go over to Video Hive, and there's so many different ideas in there you can gain, you know, through After Effects or just even looking at it, say that can simply be done in a Premiere or an Avid or whatever it is. So it's not, you know, sometimes it's thinking past just, okay, I'm just going to put the text up and keep moving. Go out and find ways that actually, because you know, a really cool effect on that last piece was some type of glitch effect with everything going on. Would have been nice. It would have fit it. It would have added energy to it, and you could have told a story with words through a glitch effect on top of there. It would have elevated the piece.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks for everybody that joined us on the live broadcast, and especially thanks to the judges for coming and giving us your time and giving good feedback. There was a comment. Thank you so much for the constructive feedback. So I think, you know, for the folks that were watching this morning and folks that will watch this, you know, as it's out on the web in the future, I think you guys gave them some really great tips for how to build better products going forward. So thank you for that. And with that, I don't really have anything else.
Just one thing, Chief. I think that especially with this year's nominees, the number that we had, we hopefully will have better numbers next year and in the future. So one thing I would ask is for not only the nominees putting in packages, but their supervisors and their chain of command to make sure that they're being mindful of the SOP. We will continue to update and improve the guidance. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact our office at AFPOL, and we'll be more than happy to help you. And thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, and goodbye.
Bye.